Welcome to our video on implementing weak entities in SQL databases. We'll explore how these dependent entities are translated into relational database structures. In the relational model, a weak entity is represented as a weak table. Crucially, a weak table cannot stand alone. It relies on a foreign key that references its identifying or strong table. Now let's look at how this connection is formalized. The foreign key column in the weak table explicitly links the weak entity instance back to its parent entity in the strong table. This foreign key is what implements the essential identifying relationship between the two tables. Most often, you encounter plural weak entities. A plural weak entity means there can be multiple dependent rows associated with a single parent record. When plural, the weak table's primary key is composite. It's made up of the foreign key, plus another column that is unique within the context of the parent. However, sometimes the weak entity is singular. Occasionally, the relationship is one-to-one, meaning the weak entity is singular, with only one row per parent record. In this singular case, the foreign key alone is sufficient to serve as the primary key for the weak table. Implementing weak entities also requires defining referential integrity actions to maintain data consistency. We typically set cascade actions on the primary key of the strong table for both update and delete operations. This ensures changes propagate to the weak table. Conversely, we usually restrict actions on the foreign key, restrict on foreign key insert, and update to prevent orphaned records. Finally, let's review how this relationship is visually represented in diagrams. In entity relationship diagrams, arrows are used to clearly illustrate the path of dependency, showing which table relies on another. The arrow starts at the foreign key column in the weak table and points toward the strong table that holds the referenced primary key. In conclusion, weak entities are crucial for modeling complex relationships in your database. Weak entities may depend on strong ones, but together they build the strong relational fabric of any robust database structure.
Project is a strong entity. Then task is a weak entity identified by project. Okay? So project code is the primary key. Project code is the primary key of the project table. Okay. Then the task table has a foreign key, project code, that references project. Okay. So if each project has at most one task, project code is unique in task and becomes the primary key. So if each project has many tasks, project code is not unique and the primary key is composite, project code task. So optionally, foreign key action may appear on the diagram. So if a weak entity has several identifying relationships, the primary key includes one foreign key for each identifying relationship. So the primary key may include an additional column if necessary for uniqueness. So let's look into this while we're implementing weak entities with several identifying relationships. So flight and passengers are strong entities. Booking is a weak entity identified by flight and passenger. Flight and passenger become strong tables, so primary key are flight code and passenger key. Booking becomes a weak table with foreign keys that reference flight and passenger tables. So the primary key of booking is flight code and passenger key. If a passenger can make several bookings of the same flight, a third column is necessary in the primary key. So let's work on this exercise so that we understand the concept of weak entities. So runaway is a weak entity identified by the strong entity airport. Okay? So airport is the primary key of the airport table. Airport code. So at each point, runaway number is unique. Each of the following is a good primary key for the runaway table. Airport code, runaway name. Okay, I'll say true. fail because runaway name is optional and therefore a null value column. So primary keys cannot contain null value column. So runaway name is optional and therefore a null value column. So primary keys cannot contain null value column. So which of the things is a good primary key for runaway table? So we have a runaway table. So which of the following is a good primary key? So you have airport name, runaway number. Runaway number is required but not unique. Airport name is required and unique. So buildings. So this is true because with table, primary key usually contains the primary key of the identifying table and the additional column for uniqueness. So airport code is the primary key of the airport table since runaway numbers are unique at each airport. So airport runaway is unique and a good primary key. So here we got airport name and runaway number because with primary table keys usually contain primary key of the identifying table. So since airport name is not the primary key of airport, so therefore airport name runaway is not a good primary key for runaway. Okay, so federal runaway code is a good primary because usually weak table primary key is the composite of identifying table primary key and another column. However, the database designer may prefer a simple primary key. So if federal runaway code is unique, required, and simple and stable, hence a good alternative. Let's just check out the federal. Oh, it was required and unique, so that's a good primary key. Airport code and direction code. Let's look at that. Airport code is required and unique. Direction code is required. So this is similar to what we had here. Was it this? Airport code and runaway number. So runaway number was required and airport code was required and unique. So we can say this is similar. So we can say true. Okay, we are correct. We are wrong. So because several runaways at the airport can point in the same direction. So airport code direction code is not unique and cannot be primary. Good. So we are done with that exercise. How did you fare? Put in the comment sections. If you found this helpful, kindly subscribe. And then watch out for the next video when we'll be looking at implementing supertype and subtype entities.